Hi friends. I invite you all to listen to a brand new story.
When Emma was just 6 years old, she found a wounded wolf pup at the edge of the forest. His leg was broken, his fur soaked in blood, and yet his golden eyes stared at her with a fierce will to survive. She should have been afraid. Every instinct told her to run. But she didn't. Instead, she wrapped him in her little jacket, carried him home like a secret treasure, and hid him in the old shed behind her parents' house. No one knew. Not her parents. Not the neighbors. It became their secret. Every day after school she would sneak him food, clean his wounds, and whisper him stories in the dim light of a flashlight. She named him Luke. And somehow, against all odds, the little wolf survived. For months he healed. For months they shared a bond that no one could explain. And then one day, when his leg grew strong enough, he limped back into the forest and vanished. Emma cried for days. She waited by the trees, whispering his name, hoping he would return. He never did. Years passed. Emma grew older. Childhood melted into memory, and the forest faded into a distant echo. Until one day at 16 she returned. Her grandmother had passed away and left her the old house at the forest's edge. The house was smaller than she remembered, the paint peeling, the garden overgrown. But the shed was still there. Its wooden planks warped with age, the rusty lock still hanging in place. She stood before it for a long time, her fingers twitching as if remembering how they used to turn that lock quietly at dawn to sneak inside and feed Luke. The forest hadn't changed. Towering pines loomed at the property's edge, their branches whispering the same low language she once thought was the forest breathing. That night, as she unpacked, the silence of the woods pressed down on her. Not the noise, the silence. Absolute, watchful silence after midnight, as if something stood just beyond the tree line, listening. The next morning she walked down the old path to the stream. The trail was overgrown, branches forcing her to take detours, but she found the place. The bend in the creek where she first saw him. The moss-covered stone where she once sat while Luke curled up beside her. The memories came rushing back so hard she had to step away. That night, sometime after 2, she woke to the sound of the front gate creaking open. Slow. Deliberate. Then came footsteps across the yard. Steady. Confident. Not stumbling like a deer. Not soft like a cat. Measured. Certain. Emma froze. Then, cautiously, she pulled back the curtain. The yard was empty. But the gate stood wide open. In the morning she found the tracks. Huge paw prints sunk deep into the wet earth. Not a dog's. Too large. Too heavy. The claws curled inward strangely and the spacing seemed wrong. As if the thing that left them didn't move like a normal animal. The townsfolk had noticed too. At the small general store, the clerk looked at her curiously. "You staying at the old Granger place?" he asked. Emma nodded. "You hear anything strange out there? Folks been saying there's a big dog in those woods. Big enough to take livestock. Sheriff says it's just coyotes, but..." He trailed off. Emma said nothing. She just paid and left. That evening, curiosity tugged at her until she took a flashlight and walked to the tree line. She wasn't going far, just enough to quiet the question gnawing at her. On the bark of the old pine near the stream she saw it. A mark. A crescent-shaped carving. She had made that mark 10 years ago, the day she last saw Luke. And now it looked fresh. The nights grew stranger. The silence heavier. Sometimes she heard low sounds outside her window, not footsteps but a guttural noise, deep and deliberate. Once, through the rain-smeared glass she saw them. Yellow eyes, unblinking, watching her from the trees. The townspeople grew restless. Fences reinforced. Signs appeared, caution, predator. Whispers followed Emma wherever she went. The girl at the Granger place. The one it kept coming back to. Pushpin mid-story YouTube hook. Engaging viewers. Backhand index pointing right. If you've made it this far, you can probably feel it too. The tension, the forest closing in, the question of whether Luke is protector or predator. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and drop your theory in the comments. Do you think the wolf came back as a friend or something else entirely? Evergreen tree wolf face. One night, rain dripping steadily on the roof, Emma was woken not by sound, but by the absence of it. The back door was ajar, pushed open as if by a hand. She stepped outside with her flashlight, boots sinking in the mud. The beam caught them, paw prints leading from the woods across the yard, stopping right at the back steps, where she had just stood. The next morning she heard the rumors. A goat missing 2 miles away. No broken fence. No struggle. Just tracks too large for a dog and the stench of wet fur. Still she told no one. She went back to the tree with the crescent mark and drew another, smaller crescent beside it with chalk. A message. Not a command, not a plea. Just recognition. That night she heard it. Not footsteps. A sound between a howl and something almost human. Long low. Unearthly. He was back. But was he still the same? Emma started locking her doors at night, not out of fear but ritual. Deep down, she sensed the lock wouldn't matter if he truly wanted to come in. It was a gesture. A signal to whatever watched from the dark that she still held on to human habits, boundaries. The next day in the early mist she found a gift on the porch. A dead rabbit. Not mangled. Not torn apart. Just placed. Like an offering. Luke used to do that. When he first began walking again after healing, he'd leave her things. A feather, a half-eaten squirrel, a broken toy she'd dropped the week before. But this wasn't a pup's clumsy tribute. This was calculated. Chosen. And it kept happening. Over the following week, each morning greeted her with a new gift. A shiny stone, a pile of feathers stacked neatly, a strip of worn leather that looked eerily like a piece of her old jacket. Emma didn't tell anyone. She couldn't. Who would believe her? That the creature leaving these tokens was the same one she once bottle-fed, the same one whose fur she brushed as a child? One night, after the wind had howled for hours and she couldn't sleep, she stepped out onto the porch barefoot. The moon carved a path through the clouds. Rain clung to the edges of the roof. And there across the yard stood the shadow. Massive. Still. Watching. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes locked with his. And for a moment the forest held its breath. "Luke," she whispered. He stepped forward once. Slowly. His fur glistened, matted from the storm. A scar now ran along his shoulder, curved and angry. His eyes, still golden, still deep, blinked once. Then he turned and vanished into the trees. Emma collapsed to her knees. She wasn't afraid. Not exactly. What she felt was worse. Familiarity. He remembered her. She was certain now. He knew. But what was he becoming? In the days that followed, she stayed near the house. Journaled everything. Drew the paw prints. Mapped the gift locations. Reread her childhood diaries for clues. Anything from those years when he was just a pup. And then came the scream. It echoed from the neighbor's farm. Emma ran without thinking. Heart pounding, lungs burning. When she got there, the scene was chaos. A cow dead. Throat torn open. Sheriff's truck already there. Flashlights dancing across the field. "What did this?" someone asked. "Mountain lion," the sheriff said quickly. Too quickly. But Emma saw the tracks. Fresh. Too large for a cat. The same unnatural stride. They were covering it up. Or worse, they didn't want to believe what was out there. The townspeople grew colder toward her. Conversation stopped when she walked by. She was the one who lived on the edge of the forest. The one the predator kept returning to. Someone spray-painted her gate. Which? She scrubbed it off silently. That night she didn't sleep. She sat on the porch with a lantern burning low. In her lap, the scarf she wore the night she found Luke as a child. It was faded now, torn at one end, but still smelled faintly of cedar and childhood. Midnight came. And with it the sound. Not footsteps. Not growls. A low, vibrating hum, like the forest was holding a breath it couldn't release. Then from the shadows he came. Larger than she remembered. Fur darker, almost black. Scarred. His eyes glowed not with anger but with something worse. Understanding. He stopped 5 feet from her. Neither of them moved. Emma slowly extended the scarf. Luke stepped forward. Sniffed. Then, with aching gentleness, he pressed his muzzle against her hand. She felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I missed you," she whispered. And then, in a flash, he was gone again. In the days that followed, Emma existed in a haze. The encounter left her sleepless, her thoughts consumed by flashes of golden eyes, the weight of his stare, the silent understanding that had passed between them. She stopped trying to rationalize it. The rules didn't apply anymore. This wasn't just a wolf. This wasn't just memory. This was something else. At night, she sat with a notebook, scribbling words that made little sense. Not predator, not pet. Recognition isn't safety. What is he becoming? And each morning, another gift. Once, it was a torn piece of cloth she recognized as part of Ben's jacket. Another time, a bird's wing, whole, pristine, arranged with the feathers fanned like a ritual. The line between wild and human was blurring. And deep down, Emma wasn't sure she wanted to redraw it. Ben returned one evening. He stood at her porch, boots muddy, jaw clenched. "He's getting bolder," he said. "Last night someone saw him. Near the school." Emma said nothing. Ben's voice dropped. "There's talk. About bringing in someone from out of town. A trapper." Her stomach turned. "He's not attacking people. Yet." She wanted to scream. Instead, she folded her arms. "You saw what happened at the cage. He could have killed someone. But he didn't. That doesn't mean he won't next time." Emma shook her head. "You don't get it. He's not coming back for blood." Ben looked at her, then really looked, and in his eyes she saw something flicker. Not anger, not fear, but jealousy. "You care about him," he said. She didn't answer. Ben stepped back. "Just be careful, Emma. Not all monsters show their teeth right away." That night she didn't see Luke. And the night after that, nothing. Silence. Empty porch. No gifts. No eyes in the trees. A cold began to settle in her chest. Had she scared him off? Had Ben done something? She marched to town the next day, confronted the sheriff, demanded answers. But all she got were evasions, tight-lipped shrugs, and a cold stare from Ben across the diner. Then came the fire. It started in the woods. A small blaze quickly spreading. Trees lit like matchsticks. Smoke rolled into the sky. Panic rippled through the town. Emma ran toward it. Fire trucks screamed past her. Men shouted. The wind carried embers across the creek. And then she saw him. Through the smoke, through the heat, Luke, cornered between flame and cliff. Fur singed, eyes wild. She didn't think. Just moved. Dodged flames. Climbed over burning logs. Coughing, choking. Until she reached him. His leg, the same one that had once been broken, bled again. He growled, low and trembling, but didn't strike. Emma knelt beside him. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here." With strength she didn't know she had, she pulled him up. He limped beside her, heavy and trembling. Together they moved through smoke and ash, until the fire line broke and they tumbled into wet grass. He collapsed. She collapsed. The world was silent but for the hiss of dying embers and distant sirens. She ran her hand over his side. His ribs heaved. "We made it," she said, tears streaking her soot-stained cheeks. Luke looked at her then, truly looked, and for the first time she saw it. He wasn't just a wolf. He wasn't just her past. He was both, and something more. The aftermath of the fire changed everything. The sheriff declared a town emergency. No one was allowed near the woods. Curfews were enforced. Rumors spread like wildfire, about Emma, about Luke, about what had been seen in the flames. Some said they saw a girl walking side by side with a monster. Others claimed she summoned it. Ben avoided her. Her neighbors glared from behind curtains. Even the general store clerk who used to smile now watched her like she was dangerous. She stayed indoors for days tending to Luke's wounds. He had followed her back after the fire, limping, breath shallow. She cleared out the shed again just like when they were kids. Only now he barely fit inside. He was enormous, still wild, still scarred. But when she touched him he didn't flinch. One night she sat outside the shed, her hands wrapped around a mug of cold tea. The moon hung low, orange from the smoke still lingering in the sky. "Why did you come back?" she whispered, not expecting an answer. Inside Luke stirred. The sound of claws gently tapping wood. A soft breath. And then the faintest sound, a low humming growl. Not aggressive. Almost melodic. Emma closed her eyes. She remembered being 6, whispering stories to him in the dark, feeling like the world was magic. Now that magic felt heavier, older, wiser. The next morning she found a dead deer at the edge of her property, its throat torn open, eyes wide, but not eaten, just displayed. A warning? A gift? A message? She buried it, alone. She couldn't explain why, but the act felt ceremonial. Luke watched from the tree line, silent, unmoving. More time passed. The town simmered in tension. Emma rarely left the house. She read old books, wrote in her notebook, and watched the woods. Luke didn't approach the shed anymore, but he was always near. Sometimes she saw his shape through the fog. Sometimes she heard his low howl at dusk. But he never came closer. Until the night of the second fire. This time it was her house. She woke to smoke. The back window shattered. Flames licking up the kitchen curtains. She screamed, stumbling barefoot into the yard. The shed was burning too. The porch light flickered, casting wild shadows. And there, at the edge of the yard, stood a figure. Not Luke. A man. Hooded. Watching. He ran when she screamed again. She didn't remember grabbing the hose or dousing the flames or crawling through the ash to pull out old photo albums from the living room. But she remembered Luke. Because he arrived like thunder. Bursting through the trees with a roar so loud it shook the ground. His teeth bared. Eyes wild. He tore into the trees after the hooded man, disappearing into the night. She didn't see him again for 2 days. When he returned, he was limping worse than before. Blood on his side. One ear torn. But his eyes still burned gold. He collapsed near the porch and didn't move. Emma rushed to him. Her hands shook as she pressed rags against his wounds. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You don't get to leave again." He didn't move. She stayed by his side all night, watching his chest rise and fall, brushing his fur with trembling fingers. The townspeople came at dawn. Sirens. Lights. Voices shouting. The sheriff. Ben. Others with guns. Someone had found the body of the hooded man in the woods. Mauled. Nearly unrecognizable. They blamed Luke. They blamed her. "This ends now," the sheriff said. Emma stood between them and the porch. "You're too late," she said quietly. "He's already dying." Ben lowered his rifle. The sheriff didn't. But then Luke stirred. He rose, slowly, painfully, and stepped down the porch. He didn't growl. Didn't lunge. He just stood there beside Emma, like a shadow reborn in flesh. And that's when the sheriff lowered his weapon. No one spoke. Luke turned to Emma, exhaled a long breath, and walked into the woods. No one followed. He didn't return again. The weeks that followed passed in a strange blur. Emma stayed. Not because the town wanted her to, but because she couldn't leave. Not yet. The house was charred but standing. She cleaned what she could. Repaired what was possible. And every night she lit a lantern on the porch. For him. Just in case. The townspeople kept their distance. Some whispered that she'd lost her mind. Others called her dangerous. A few believed she had some unnatural connection with the creature. Half girl, half wolf, they said. But Emma didn't care. In her heart there was no mystery. Just a memory. The girl and the pup in the shed. The bond forged not through magic or myth, but something simpler. Something purer. Trust. One night Ben came to the porch. He looked thinner. Tired. But his face was softer. "I'm sorry," he said. Emma didn't answer. "I thought I was protecting people. I didn't realize I was just afraid." Still she said nothing. Ben set something on the steps. An old photo in a cracked frame. It was her and Luke years ago. A candid shot her grandmother must have taken. The little girl with tangled hair. The pup with his paw over her shoe. He left without another word. Emma brought the photo inside. That night she dreamed of the forest. But it wasn't a nightmare. In the dream she stood at the stream, moonlight shimmering on the water. Luke approached from the trees, whole and strong. He nuzzled her hand like he used to, then turned and vanished into the mist. When she woke, the porch lantern was out. And at the base of the steps, a stone. Small, smooth, crescent-shaped. Just like the one she used to carry in her pocket as a child. He remembered. She sat down, holding the stone tight, tears in her eyes. He was alive. She didn't know where he was. Maybe he was far. Maybe he was close. Maybe he'd never return. But he was alive. And he still remembered. In the months that followed, things slowly settled. The town moved on. Children played in the streets again. The woods, though still feared, were no longer forbidden. And Emma? Emma found peace in the stillness. She planted a tree where the shed once stood. She painted the house. She walked the stream path every Sunday, whispering his name, not to summon him, but to thank him. For surviving. For remembering. For coming back. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in October, softening the sharp edges of the forest. Emma bundled up, lit the lantern every evening and waited. She didn't expect anything. But the waiting had become part of her rhythm, part of healing. Then came the tracks. Clear as day, right beneath her bedroom window. Large, deep, spaced far apart. Not fresh enough to be recent, but not old either. Snow only lightly dusted the prints. She knelt, ran her fingers along the edges. No claw marks. Just smooth pads. Measured steps. Intentional. A message. He had come back. He had been close. That night she didn't sleep. She kept the windows slightly cracked, letting the scent of pine and snow swirl into her room. And somewhere in the stillness she thought she heard it, a distant howl, long and low, fading into the hills. The townspeople didn't talk about him anymore. They wanted to believe it was over. Emma didn't argue. Let them move on. But she knew better. Some nights she would leave scraps of meat by the tree with the crescent mark. Nothing large. Just enough. In the morning they would be gone, and in their place something left behind. A bone, a feather, once even a pine cone chewed into a spiral. Small offerings. Mutual recognition. She started writing again, journaling her memories, sketching Luke from different moments in her life. The pup in the shed, the shadow in the storm, the giant in the cage, the ghost at her door. In those drawings she tried to capture his eyes. Not just the glow but the weight. The awareness, and the question that never left her, what was he now? Not a pet, not a monster, something in between, something that defied a name. She never tried to trap him, never tried to bring him home. That wasn't what their bond was about anymore. It was about space, about respect, and about trust, rebuilt not through touch but through presence. One night the lantern didn't light. The bulb had died. She stepped outside anyway, holding the scarf he once tore, now patched and faded. The wind was sharp, but the stars were clear. She whispered, "I don't know where you are, but I hope you're warm. I hope you're alive." And then she paused. Because from deep in the trees, not close but not far, she saw them. Two golden eyes catching the starlight. They didn't blink. They didn't move. Just watched. Emma raised the scarf slightly, held it to her heart, and smiled. The eyes blinked once, and vanished into the dark. He was still out there. And that was enough. Spring thawed the forest slowly. The snow receded, leaving muddy trails and blooming moss. Birds returned, their songs tentative at first, then confident. Life stirred again, even in the spaces where grief once lived. Emma had changed too. She no longer jumped at every creak in the house or stared down neighbors in the diner. She smiled more. Even laughed. The weight on her shoulders wasn't gone, but she had learned how to carry it. Luke hadn't been seen in months. No prints. No eyes in the dark. Just absence, quiet, respectful. And that, too, was its own kind of presence. One afternoon, while cleaning the shed, she found it. Beneath the floorboards, hidden under loose planks, lay the old flashlight she used as a child, still faintly working despite time. And next to it, a small, flat stone, smooth, crescent-shaped, with a single claw mark carved across it. She didn't remember putting it there, but she understood it. A symbol, a reminder, of everything they had shared, and everything they had survived. She placed the stone on the windowsill above her bed. Every morning she touched it like a ritual. Every night she whispered a simple phrase before sleep. "Wherever you are, thank you." One evening, as dusk settled like a soft blanket over the house, she sat on the porch with a notebook in her lap. Not drawing. Not journaling. just sitting, remembering. That's when she felt it. Not saw, felt. A presence. She turned. And for the briefest moment, a breath, a heartbeat, a flicker of memory, she saw him. Not in the yard. Not in the forest. But in her mind's eye. The pup with a broken leg. The shadow in the trees. The protector in chains. The choice, always, always, to return. She smiled. Because she knew the truth now. Luke had never really left. He had become part of the forest. Part of the silence. Part of her. And maybe, just maybe, that was what he had always been meant to be. Not hers. Not the town's. But wild. Free. And unforgettable. As the stars blinked awake above the pines, Emma closed her eyes, let the breeze run its fingers through her hair, and whispered one last time. I remember too. And the forest, in its own quiet way, seemed to whisper back.
Bye bye!